The largest property company in the world, Evergrande, which was located in China, has just gone bankrupt. It's lost $600 billion. However, there are now graveyards of apartment blocks and properties littered all over China. There's cities that no one lives in. We all have heard about that. But you might not have heard about the graveyards of car factories that now litter the landscape in China. The majority of them owned by companies like Hyundai, Nissan, and Toyota. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking. Great to see you. Yeah, this is a pretty serious concern. In 2017, Hyundai invested $1.2 billion in a new factory in Chongqing, southwestern China, with the goal of reaching an annual output of 300,000 internal combustion engine vehicles. Yeah, that was a terrible idea. They have 6 years later basically given the factory away for peanuts on the dollar. And now the rapid switch by Chinese consumers to buy electric cars and not internal combustion, as we all knew would happen, which is going to happen in Europe and America as well, has stalled sales, or basically meant that their sales have just gone nowhere, forcing the car maker to sell the factory for less than a quarter of what it costs to manufacture. Way less. In fact, $200 million for a factory that cost more than $1.2 billion. Plant continued to be in the red, and China's automotive market is grappling with massive oversupply, said Li Hangku at the John Buke Institute of Automotive Convergence Technology, a South Korean research group. No one was willing to buy the plant for even a fraction of its value. But what's its value? Guys, when we look at the share price of Toyota, Toyota says, well, we have all these assets. Nissan does the same thing. Hyundai does the same thing. We have billions of dollars of factories with amazing assets in them that will produce the cars of yesterday. They don't tell you that none of them have any EV production lines in these factories that I'm talking about here that are worth billions of dollars. I mean, realistically, we know the true value of car factories is it's a fraction of what they cost to build. Look at what Tesla paid for their car factory that they coincidentally purchased from Toyota in California. It was absolutely a minuscule percentage of the cost that it was to build that factory. Now that plant, that Hyundai plant, is one of hundreds of zombie factories in China. The analysts are predicting over the next decade in the Chinese car market, the world's biggest by far, 28 million cars are sold every year in China, which is 1/3 of the entire global car market. They're saying production is going to just collapse. Since last year, exports have grown, but not for these internal combustion engine vehicles. Primarily, those exports are actually EVs. In 2023, China produced 17.8 million internal combustion engine cars, but that was a drop of nearly 40% from its peak only a few years before that. Bill Russo, the former head of Chrysler in China and founder of Automobility, said the precipitous decline of internal combustion engine car sales meant as much of half of the industry's installed capacity, about 25 million out of 50 million units annual capacity, was not being used. 25 million. That is ridiculous. I mean, 25 million car sales. Let's have some context here. We're only selling 75 million cars every year in the entire world. And they're saying there's enough factories to build 25 million cars that are just mothballed. Guess who owns these factories? Primarily legacy automakers, primarily Japanese automakers, some from Volkswagen Group, but the majority of them actually are Japanese automakers, GM and Ford factories. While some older factories will be repurposed in some way for plug-in hybrids or maybe even EVs, others will never produce another car ever again, and they'll just sit dormant. In fact, some of these factories are in cities where people don't really even live anymore. Many car makers in China, Russo said, face two choices: leave the factory mothballed or crank out some volume and send those vehicles to Russia. Send them to Mexico. and hope that people buy them. Hyundai's exit comms as combined car sales in China by Hyundai and Kia affiliate fell to only 300,000 last year from nearly 2 million 5 years ago, as a result of free-falling sales of internal combustion engine cars. Hyundai, which makes cars in China as part of a joint venture with state-owned BAIC Motor, has, well, refused to comment on any of this, of what's going on. They just want to say nothing. So what's happening here is Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers, along with Tesla, are dominating the car market in China. And this is killing legacy auto. This is killing the car brands of the world because they rely on China for a huge percentage of their profit. An intense price war across the Chinese automotive sector is only putting huge pressure on legacy automakers like Toyota, Volkswagen, General Motors, Nissan, and of course, even smaller manufacturers like Mitsubishi, who have basically run away from China and just left their factories. Just run away, left the keys in the door, and they've gone. Now, these companies have been very slow to adopt EVs, and as a result, the Chinese population are basically abandoning these manufacturers. They're losing sales to companies like BYD, Tesla, and Aeon. Until recently, foreign car makers could only enter the Chinese market as a joint venture with a local partner. Of 16 joint ventures between Chinese and foreign groups, only 5 had a capacity utilization rate higher than 50%, while 8 were below 30%, according to a report by Chinese media outlet Yikai Global. Now, if you're putting out less than 30% of your capacity, your factory is losing money, and you've got maybe 12 months at max before that factory is going to be shut down. We've already seen massive numbers of factories shut down. It means we're basically on the precipice, on the edge of a wave of shutdowns from these internal combustion engine car manufacturers. In response to the worsening domestic market situation in China, Chinese companies have been trying to ramp exports up to places like Russia, where they still buy gasoline-powered cars, a market that many international car makers have quit after the country's invasion of Ukraine. Analysts question whether those sales deliver meaningful profits to the Chinese groups, if they're making any money at all, and for how long they can continue, or if other developing markets can help soak up Chinese non-EV exports. Now, realistically, can that happen? I mean, if it's not an EV, do people want a Chinese car that's just internal combustion? Not really. Demand is extremely small for internal combustion engine vehicles from China. Foreign brands, though, are increasingly trying to export more from their Chinese factories, especially Nissan, who said that that's their plan. Demand in China is collapsing. Well, we'll just send all these cars from China, outside of China, to other countries. But really, do they really want an old Nissan internal combustion engine powered vehicle like the Nissan Sylphy? That's the most popular vehicle that Nissan sell, or it was the most popular vehicle Nissan sold in China. Do people really want a Nissan Sylphy sedan outside of China? Maybe, but I don't think there'd be much demand for them. Experts say in doing this, companies are risking undercutting their own factories in other markets, so it's just going to cause them more problems. Volkswagen, the largest foreign car maker by sales operating in China, declined to provide excess capacity figures in the country, but said in the market for petrol-powered cars, it was still lucrative. Well, sales can't hide the truth. The reality is here, legacy automakers are losing market share incredibly quickly. Growth, Volkswagen believes, will mostly come from the hundreds of smaller Chinese cities that usually have a population of 3 million or less. And that is in part because car ownership in the bigger, more developed cities is high, and restrictions on buying petrol-powered cars are enormous. It's almost impossible to buy an internal combustion engine vehicle in Beijing, a new one. You can't register them. I mean, you've got to go into a lottery simply to register one. And then you've got to pay tens of thousands. I believe that the plate cost is around $50,000. So that's why it might work if you're interested in buying a BMW or Mercedes or a luxury car. Those are the kind of people who are willing to pay those ridiculous fees, and they can probably pull some strings. So they don't have to go into the lottery. But if you're not going to buy one of those vehicles, if you're just going to buy a standard Japanese vehicle or a General Motors or Ford, then you pretty much can't buy one in Beijing. Another critical factor is the lack of charging infrastructure in these poor cities, though, which has frustrated EV industry growth. The number of cars in China is still relatively low to the population, while the average there, they say, is just 185 vehicles per 1,000 inhabitants. But there are almost 800 vehicles per 1,000 inhabitants in America and around 580 per 1,000 in Germany, says Volkswagen. So Volkswagen is saying, oh, it doesn't matter that, the majority of our cars are internal combustion because there's plenty of people in China. Surely they'll buy them. Well, yeah. Volkswagen last year was overtaken by BYD for the first time in history, and it announced $5 billion worth of investments in China to build electric cars, basically meaning its old internal combustion factories are virtually useless. It has started converting some factory lines, though, in China to produce EVs, and the group will work to gradually hybridize the internal combustion engine models they sell and thereby convert them into an electrified new energy vehicle fleet, they've said. But the problem is this. China is about to hit 50% EV sales penetration over the next 3 months. So it won't be long before it hits 80% or 100%. Volkswagen is an outlier, though, in deciding to double down on the Chinese market. Spending by most legacy automakers in China has ground to a halt. Now, the Financial Times says that industry executives say that the biggest pressure on all legacy car makers in China stems from the rise of new EV factories, which take a radically different approach to car manufacturing. In Hefei, west of Shanghai, a factory owned by NIO demonstrates this challenge. The factory, opened in late 2022, is designed around founder William Li's bet that EV customers will increasingly want cars with customized features rather than a mass market product from a dealership. The factory offers different configurations, both physical design and software features, among its 8 different NIO models. Cars can be delivered in China around 3 weeks after they're ordered, or 90 days to customers in Europe. Now, these car manufacturers in China have popped up everywhere, and they're selling EVs at the same price as a gasoline-powered vehicle. Now, here's a comment that was made by a Chinese citizen. People in America talk about coal power charging China's EVs. The truth is, most EVs running in cities are actually providing incredibly improved air quality than what they were decades ago. People travel to Shenzhen or to Chinese cities, and they're really surprised about the air quality and how there's so little engine noise in the cities. The concentration of EVs means that people don't have to face the incredible exhaust gases that are causing cancer all over the world. And they say that it's going to look barbaric in 40 years when we look at the pollution we used to put up with by consuming or basically cramming these exhaust-producing vehicles in dense city traffic in places where millions of people live. Now, Chinese consumers are very well aware of the enormous health cost of you breathing in the fumes from diesel and gasoline-powered vehicles. Why do you think they wear masks everywhere? They know what those exhausts are doing to them. They know they're causing cancer. People in China know that even more so than people in the West. That's the biggest reason for the rise of EVs in China. And there's nothing legacy auto can do to continue selling these old internal combustion engine vehicles. What does this all mean? Bankruptcies from legacy auto in China. More and more car brands in China will simply declare bankruptcy and then just leave. Leave behind factories and factories and factories. A lot of those factories will be repurposed by Chinese manufacturers at some point in time to manufacture EVs. But between now and then, they'll probably just be mothballed. Thank you for watching.